vast, silent expanse of Nevada's high desert, some secrets are buried deeper than sand. This is the story of Outpost 73, a decommissioned military research station brought back online for one last, fateful experiment. In June of 2003, a small team of scientists, led by engineer Dr. Neil Rourke, began monitoring old radio frequencies, hoping to map solar interference. What they found instead was something else entirely. It started as a whisper on a forgotten channel, a single, repeating radio pulse, a clean, distinct tone arriving every 47 seconds. It was too structured to be a natural phenomenon, yet too irregular to be a malfunctioning piece of machinery. Rourke, with a touch of gallows humor typical of those who work in isolation, recorded the signal. He logged it in his notes and jokingly dubbed it the Desert Heartbeat. For a week, it was a curiosity, a ghostly rhythm in the static. But then, the heartbeat began to change. The pulse didn't just shift in its tone or its timing. It started to sound less like a signal and more like a voice. It was as if something, somewhere, out in the desolate landscape, or perhaps somewhere else entirely, was learning to speak. The team, once amused, now felt a cold, creeping unease. The desert had always been a place of quiet mystery, but now it seemed to be actively communicating, and they were the only ones listening. Driven by a mix of scientific curiosity and a growing sense of dread, Dr. Rourke fed the anomalous signal into a spectrum analyzer. On the screen, the waveform bloomed into a complex pattern. It didn't look like any radio wave he had ever seen. Instead, the jagged peaks and troughs uncannily resembled human vocal formants, the fundamental shapes our mouths make to form consonants and vowels. The signal wasn't just a pulse, it was speech, just impossibly distorted, stretched across the electromagnetic spectrum. Rourke sent the data to a linguist colleague who ran the complex wave patterns through advanced translation software. The program struggled, spitting out fragments and nonsense, until one clear, chilling phrase emerged from the digital noise. A two-word message repeating on a loop. Below you, the team rationalized it as a fluke, a bizarre case of signal interference from a nearby base, or a stray broadcast bouncing off the ionosphere. It had to be a mistake. But then, the floor of the laboratory began to vibrate. It was a low, subtle tremor at first, almost imperceptible, but it grew stronger, a deep thrumming that resonated up through their boots, and it was perfectly timed, arriving in perfect synchronicity with the pulse of the signal from the speakers. Every 47 seconds, the message would repeat, and the very ground beneath their feet would answer. Panic began to set in. Below you was no longer a phantom message. It was a physical reality. Dr. Rourke frantically pulled up the station's original blueprints, searching for an explanation. The documents were clear. Outpost 73 was a single-story structure, built on a solid concrete slab. There were no basements, no sublevels, no tunnels. Nothing. Desperate for answers, they deployed a thermal imaging unit. The scan revealed what the blueprints denied. 30 feet directly beneath the main lab, a massive, distinct heat signature glowed on the screen. A geometric shape inconsistent with any natural geology. The maintenance crew, now on high alert, began a floor-by-floor search. Underneath the humming diesel generator, hidden beneath a steel plate, they found it. A sealed hatch, set flush into the concrete. It was unmarked with no handles or labels, its edges fused shut by decades of rust. As the crew fired up a cutting torch, the signal from the radio speakers tripled in volume, screaming with a new, urgent intensity. When the torch finally broke the seal, a blast of frigid air rushed out of the darkness below. It was a cold, stale draft, like opening a freezer that had been sealed for centuries. The air didn't just feel old, it felt ancient. Armed with helmet cameras and handheld flashlights, a 3-person team, including Rourke, descended the newly installed ladder. The space they entered defied all logic. It wasn't a basement or a bunker. The walls were not concrete or steel. They were a smooth, black, non-reflective material that curved in impossible, non-Euclidean geometry. The air was heavy, silent, and oppressively cold. The metallic surfaces they touched seemed to ripple, reflecting distorted shapes of things that weren't there, like ghosts in the polished obsidian. As they moved deeper, the radio pulse from their comms changed again. It was no longer a signal. It was a voice, a sibilant whisper that echoed inside their helmets, speaking each man's name in a perfect imitation of their own voice. It was a personal, intimate violation. Then, one by one, their helmet lights began to fail. First, a flicker. Then, sudden, complete darkness. Soon, only Rourke's camera remained, its beam cutting a frantic path through the suffocating black. He swung the light around, trying to find his team, but found only the impossible corridor stretching into infinity. And then, his camera settled on it. In the center of a vast, cavernous chamber, a colossal black sphere hovered in the air. It was utterly featureless, absorbing all light, yet it seemed to breathe, slowly expanding and contracting in the suffocating silence. The last image from Dr. Rourke's camera feed is of that breathing sphere. Then, the signal went dead. Total radio silence. A federal recovery team was dispatched, arriving at the isolated outpost. 12 hours later, they found the station completely empty. There were no personnel, no signs of a struggle, no bodies, just abandoned research equipment, some of which had been melted into slag, as if exposed to an intense, focused heat. From the open hatch in the generator room, the only sound was the faint, rhythmic hiss of radio static echoing from the depths. The frequency the team had discovered is still active today, a faint ghost on the airwaves, monitored by agencies that refuse to acknowledge its existence. The message is no longer a warning, it's an invitation. It alternates now between 2 words, endlessly repeating for anyone who knows how to listen. The first word is below, the second is return.